Ryan Roden, did you just unmute just to say hello? Yo.
Yo.
There it is. Yo. You're looking so cool in that shot too. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway. Yeah, so we talked about menu and profitability and all those things last week. Great time. If you missed it, make sure you turn into it there. Today, we're going to continue much of the same when it comes to metrics and control of metrics and understanding your metrics, because I think that, you know, as we were talking about content and what we're discussing, especially in Finance 2.0 for this portion of coffee experts, I think the thing that came up over and over again was ownership. You know, this idea of ownership. And I think that sometimes when we hear that word ownership, we're thinking about you, the owners, you know, if you're an owner tuning into this, or maybe we think about people who are owners of the coffee stands that we're running, instead of realizing, no, what we're talking about is how can you pass ownership along to your people? How can you allow your people to begin to own their decisions, like to really treat the stand as if it was theirs that they were owning, and therefore making decisions based upon metrics that make sense. Like it's cool to add all the foofy, fluffy, beautiful things, but does it make sense to the bottom line? And what are ways that we can meet the customer where they're at, give them an excellent experience, but also be very mindful of there are hard costs in that, you know, and what's a way that we could meet them similarly and have it not cost us as much, and really teaching our people the value of the dollar. You know, is if your parents and have children out there, it's easy for your kids to forget the power of the dollar, you know, and mom or dad are footing the bill. You know, it's one thing, but I've had kids move out recently, you know, who are having to begin to understand the reality of like, oh, things cost. And I think that the more that you can pass that knowledge base on to your baristas and even more importantly, your managers, your assistant managers, your leads, I think that you can really begin to control things. Ben, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, COGS is a really easy one. Like if you can get your managers to really take ownership of the dollars going out of their store, not just the dollars coming in, I mean, that's going to save you a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, and a lot of lost revenue. If you just have a few good managers who are, hey, look, this is my job. This is my shop. I own this. I'm going to treat it like it was my own money purchasing these ingredients that I'm using to make these drinks. And if you get some people like that and you can get that culture in your company, you're going to do fantastically.
Yeah, I think too. I mean, Drew spent some time a couple of weeks ago talking about labor too. I mean, that's obviously another big number to be watching. What we're going to talk about today is gross sales, and we're going to talk about ways that you can keep it fun, right? Because some of this stuff we're hiring kids. Let's be honest about it. Like most of the people working at our stores are under age 21, right? There are going to be those who are older than that. I mean, not to throw anybody about Steven, you know, where like where, you know, you people like, yeah, but hopefully they're making an ascension. Steven obviously is a regional manager over a lot of stores. That's different than somebody just, you know, slinging drinks behind a counter, you know. But like you need to be able to make the knowledge base engageable for the people that are working for you. And if it's always just like crunchy numbers, they're looking at spreadsheets, that isn't always the funnest. So if you can gamify it in some way, if you can turn it into a competition, even better. And so I'm going to show you some tools today, something that we've created at the Collab team. This is also going to be on the resource page, and I meant to have that pulled up as well. So maybe Ben, do you mind pulling up just the membership area for coffee experts, just so we can show people a little bit of a tour on it. But I'd love to show you, we're going to make this available in the resource area too. So if you ever have questions about things that we're reviewing, obviously we give you free tools every single month, and we hope that you're finding benefit in those. There are also going to be a lot of tools in our resource area, and we make that available to you first. And so it's in the membership area where we've dropped a link, right, Ben? We've got the link to it. Do you have it pulled up?
Top left-hand corner of the membership area.
Do you mind showing us? Do you mind sharing your screen real quick? Do you have power to do that, or do I need to give you power? How about that?
Infinite power.
There you go.
Yep, so you see it right up here. This is where you log in, where your dashboard for the members area, and bam, resources will take you right over to the page there. That'll include all of these products right down below.
Awesome. All things we've created specifically for coffee. So I think as you jump in there and you check it out, just know that that's something that's available to you, that we really aren't soliciting a bunch of other places. This is something we're trying to make specifically available to coffee experts, needing coffee expert tools, watching us review things together. So check those out. One of the tools we're talking about today is sales and reach goals. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go over that together. So this tool You're like, Aaron, didn't you just tell me you're not going to show me a bunch of spreadsheets? Like a super like old. Well, so here, let me show you the power of the tool, and then we're going to show you where it goes, and then we're going to have some conversation around how you can use it. So first off, what you're going to notice is, and this will be on the resource page, we'll make sure that's available for you there. You're going to notice here there are a ton of stores down here on the bottom. Each tab represents a set of stores, and some stores you'll find, like for you personally, maybe like you're in your first year of business, you don't have comparable numbers to look at last year numbers on. With the sales and reach, and it's called up here, year over year sales and reach goals for your stores. What you're doing is you're comparing this year's numbers, right? You're going to project out what you feel like your goals should be based upon historic numbers. So when you're talking about this, where you don't have very much historic numbers, I would say that's the beauty of a sheet like this, is that we're going to give you multiple size stores down here at the bottom where you can kind of get a pulse on that. The way that I would do a store, like if I was to create sales and reach goals off and I don't have historic numbers, I would say, well, what is a like size store? Like what's a store of similar size, similar location, similar traffic? And that's going to give me a pretty good pulse on what I can expect between a November and a December. Whereas this is obviously not realistic. We opened in November. I mean, there's $27,000 in variance in gross sales. If you're having that kind of a problem within a store, there's a bigger problem than like that's not something you're going to see on the norm, right? There's no way you're going to grow sales $27,000 at a new location like this. So that's purely because it's new. And so the way that we've done this is there are other stores where you can look at stores about this size and say, okay, so how did a similar size store perform? You know, you see similar numbers here in November, December, and then into year two, and then into year three. And the beauty when you lay out your numbers side by side is that you can begin to predict what you believe numbers to be. And I did this for years for roasters and for other coffee clients. And what you begin to find is that similar rhythms, right? And Ben and I did this a lot together where we would go through and ask ourselves, okay, are there anomalies that should be taken in consideration? I think some of these might have anomaly notes called out where it's like, hey, these are things you need to call out based upon, this one here, like end of October, we ended at 67 to 70,000, maybe max cap for now. Like there are things where we're making notes as we're judging how sales are moving. But the beauty about that, when you create a sheet like this, where you list out all of your stores, Pasco is obviously a store we had for a lot of years, you can begin to see movement, but going from like, just watching December is not usually a huge month in coffee, but beginning to watch the numbers rise and rise and rise. And then predictably this year, I was hoping they were going to get to 92,000. And then if you scroll down here, they actually got to 101,000. To see your stores go from 30,000 to 101,000 is pretty badass, especially when you watch, like, these are just predictive. These are numbers that are actual numbers. These are actually last year's sales for each one of these years. And you'll see it change year 2, year 3. I'm giving you percentage variance of growth, right? So this one here is simply comparing this number to this number and telling you how much it grew. Obviously, anytime you're in the realm of double-digit sales is how I reference that. It's awesome. That's a pinnacle. That's what you want to see, double-digit sales. The longer a store is open, typically you don't see double-digit sales roll that deep. I mean, obviously 37% average growth is pretty freaking rad 2 years in a row. That's almost 40% growth every year. But even as you get up here, what you'll notice is even though those percentages aren't as big, look how big the number is getting, because once you get synergistic energies going, once you begin to grow numbers, even 10 to 15 to 20% is still pretty radical when it comes to numbers. So I think that the beauty of looking at numbers month over month, showing yourself what you've been expecting, what you've been able to see, you also see dips, like notice here, especially, let's look at these numbers, much smaller than maybe some of the rest of the months here where you're seeing double-digit growth. So that lets me know in the months of February and March, I need to be careful on what I'm doing with spends. And that's also an opportunity for me to consider other things that I can do to generate more sales in those months. But it just helps you to begin to consistently figure out what it is that you're looking for, what you're looking at. And then as you move to this side, this is the side that's the magic in my mind. So all of this is just showing you year over year sales, which is great. But remember how we talked about at the beginning, giving your people ownership? The more that you can give them numbers to tie back to things you can hold them accountable to, like the better you're going to be. because then you can entrust the keys to the kingdom to them. Then you can give them the reins to the store. Hey, listen, we know what historically the store has done the last 7 years between February and March. This is what we're telling you. We think that you can do this month. And then you're really putting the screws to them in the best sense of the word. It's not like, hey, I hope you do good this month. Hey, well, last year's sales, maybe, for us this year, as you're watching this, who knows what year you're watching this in the future, but like 2021 was a pretty banner year. It was still COVID, still pretty locked down, so coffee really experienced a high uptick because a lot of restaurants were shut down, but our drive-throughs were open. So we experienced radical growth, but probably to think that 2021 is the year you could use a comparison to last year too. We're finding with some of our coffee clients, that's probably not realistic. 2022 is probably not gonna be able to do those numbers, but that's okay. You've got enough years in the past that you can see what was a year in the past before things got crazy with the pandemic, where we know predictably where it could be. So I think all those things are to be taken into consideration. So all I'll do when I'm creating, so every year I'll set up a sales and reach goal sheet like this for each one of our coffee clients. And what I'll typically do is I'll ask myself, okay, so how much growth have they consistently seen? And what do I think that I can expect from them this year? We ended at 77,000. What do I think we're going to get to? So I'll come through here and I'll say, okay, there's 5,000 variants there. There's 3,000 variants there. I think that I'm going to stick with like a $5,000 variance. I think that they can do that. What does that actually end up being? About a 10% growth over that. And then what I'll do is I'll create a reach goal. So this is something I feel like they can attain. And then depending on the location, I'll give them maybe 2 to 3% even higher and make it a reach goal. And what we typically have done in the past is give them bonuses based upon what they're hitting. So when you make this kind of information public, immediately you see managers begin to compete, right? Like I know when we first rolled out sales and reach goal, Ben, I'm sure you remember this, but Jordan was managing Road 68. And I think at the time, Drew, you might have been managing Richland, or it was Jarek, one of the two of you guys. But immediately, as Jordan began to see the numbers that Richland was doing, the immediate speak out of her mouth was, we're going to beat Richland.
All the time.
I'm not going to settle on number 2. I'm not going to stay in the stores. And what'd you say, Drew? That is what happened, right?
That's
like
exactly what happened.
Our girl ramped up. And what we realized was, Ben and I'm sure you remember this, and maybe you can tell some story around it, was we realized we could get a second set of machines in at Road 68, which is going to actually bump our sales. And so maybe do you want to talk about that for a minute? Because I feel like it was when we began looking at numbers and began to see what capacity could be, we realized, wait a minute, we're under capacity. Road 68 had been open for years. Here's their store. Like they had been open for a lot of years before we dropped in a new location, or a new set of machinery. But I mean, you can see the variance in numbers as they climbed, as we began to add in a new set of machinery, and you can see what it did to their numbers. We went from a $58,000 store to drop in 140 grand in a December. I mean, that's not even their biggest month. 152 grand. $150,000 a month is an impressive number. So anyway, do you want to tell that story a little bit?
Yeah, a lot of it came from her because she was so freaking competitive, and she was like, this isn't fair. The Richland shop has 2 machines and we're over here trying to compete with only 1. So it sort of spurred us. We were like, whoa, okay, yeah, you're right. How do we get a second machine in the shop? And so we finagled and
super finagled,
Jimmy rigged.
So Jimmy rigged. I think that was some of your early duct tape days, right? Didn't you be there at some level?
Yeah, we squeezed in a second machine so they could have a dedicated. I mean, they rearranged how the flow of traffic inside the cafe worked so that they could get customers in the cafe door and out quicker, and sort of separated that completely from the drive-through, so the drive-through could be its own entity. And then that was what they needed to push to sort of like elevate them even further past what they were already doing, because it was like there was so much traffic wanting to go through that store that they just couldn't handle it. It was like they didn't have a way to get to the customers fast enough. So it was like, all right, how do we get double the amount of customers through here? Add another machine, and lo and behold, her competitive nature has propelled that shop.
I mean, so so Road 68 versus Richland. So this was our mothership for the longest time, but I think that, look at their numbers down here for December, like pretty much, and like that's pretty steady growth. You know what I mean? Like obviously this one's a little bit radical, but 13, 8, 3, 10, versus like, as you go over to here, like you start seeing some like 36, 25, 15, and then obviously 5. But then when we added in that second set of machinery, like you really saw them jump. You know, to go from 120 to 140 is a pretty radical jump when you get to that high up on the food chain. You know, like here's a comparable. You know, it's like 14,000 versus 20,000. You know, here you see 13,000. You know, like it's a pretty radical jump. And I think that that's a great example of giving your people the tools so that they can light a fire under your ass. You know what I'm saying? So they can be like, hey, I need more machines. And Drew, I think you might have been running Richland and had seen Jordan come up on your rearview mirror. Like what, tell me about that experience, about the competition.
Well, you know, it's like, it's definitely a good problem to have, is too many customers, and you know, you can only throw so many baristas at it before you have to look at your functionality. And I do remember when they got that second machine and suddenly the gap got smaller and smaller and smaller, and Jordan's smile got bigger and bigger. And she caught up and that store actually surpassed Richland really fast. And we even swapped our functionality around at Richland and we were still behind them. So sometimes, you just kind of have to look at the tools that you're using, flow you have. Like I said, you can only throw so many baristas at it before they're just kind of bumping into each other.
Yeah. And so I think that the cool thing is the tool like this is once you make everything very linear and easy to follow. Now, obviously there's some growth in it. There's some training. You got to teach people what they're looking at, right? Obviously it can be complex at first glance, but it's really a pretty simple tool. And all it is me going off of historical numbers, watching the change between seasons, and then predicting based upon what I think that could be. So if she ended at 140 in December in 2019, I did estimate a pretty steep drop. Maybe you think, Aaron, what are you nuts? Like, why are you dropping it all the way down that far? I mean, that's a huge variance in number. Well, if you look historically, you know, there's about 13,000 lost there. There's about 16 lost there. You know, there's 14 lost there. So for me, I'm like, okay, Jordan, I'll give you a 12,000 loss. Like, but I'm not going to just give you historically exactly, because I do think you should be seeing some further momentum to it. And I want to challenge her. But I think that what you'll find is, like, I got pretty good at this game. And all I was doing was historically looking at numbers and watching and predicting what I thought variance would be. So then you'll see different growth percentages here. And that's just me watching historic movement in their shops and then getting good at predicting what I thought could happen. But then down below, so this is what I'm telling them I think they should be hitting, right? This is their sales goal. This is their reach goal. If they stuck to that for growth, they would experience $150,000 growth in a $1.8 million store. If they could do this, she could get it almost to 200,000 out of a $1.8 million store. Well, so this is how it worked out. So this right down here shows you the actuals, right? So up to this point, historical numbers showing year over year change by percentage. Me then coming up with what I think the sales goal should be, largely driven off of this percentage here. So if I change that, it's going to change the numbers. You know, so all I'm doing here would, if I say, no, I think that's probably 13, it's going to go through based upon the functionality of the math in the formulas. So that'll all be part of the part of the sheet that you're going to find in the resource area. But essentially me getting good about what I think predictive growth would be, it'll also tell me what I think that this year we're going to grow by. So 10% growth we're going to experience, that's still in the double digits. That makes me feel better than 9% growth, because we're still in the 10%, is still in the double digit column. And then this is how they actually performed. So this shows how much to the goal they performed at, what their actuals are. So this number is simply just taking this number by this number and telling us how it's performing. So she actually performed at 108% what I thought she was going to do. She did 138. I said she'd do 128, which actually is pretty freaking badass. She saw only $2,000 slippage in sales from December to January. That's not really something to hear of. And she busted over a reach goal, 29%, like crazy double-digit growth year over year. And then you can see it begin. So 111 over goal. And then I'm like, okay, Jordan, I need to ramp up your numbers a little bit. So then I came in here and I adjusted what I thought she could do. And then it put a little bit of a throttle on her, you know, gave her a little bit of something to shoot for. But then she got back up to this and she ended the year at 101% of what I thought her sales goals would be. And then 98% of her reach, which means she ended at 1.8, where they were at 1.655 the year previous. So amazing growth, 11% over. I had hoped for 10. We had shot for a reach of 13. She actually came back at 11. The reason why this one's at a 3% growth rather than something else you might have seen I had shown earlier at 2%, Ben and I felt like, no, there's still margin to be had there. Like we gave you another machine. we expect that we could probably get potentially up to 3% more over your sales goal. So this is already ambitious, right? 20% growth over LY, but this is even more ambitious. And she still crushed us and made us feel like small children, because she came back with 108%, 105% to reach, and then 29%, where I was just hoping for 23%. So I think that's a lot of data. Ben, do you have anything you want to like flesh that out or compare that to or talk about when it comes to sales and reach and how this sheet works?
Yeah, I mean, it is a lot of data. At the same time, like if you don't know what your store is making and you don't have any idea of what you're hoping it to make, like you're just flying blind out in the waters. And
Yep.
when you're dealing with especially locations that are pulling this kind of revenue, to just be flying blindly out in the ocean in your ship, just sailing along, hoping you're going the right direction. That's not exactly a savvy way to operate your business, even if you're a brand new location. Like if I'm not thinking about how much I might make, next quarter or next month, that really limits your possibilities of what you can do in the future. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of data, but it's necessary data for you to have as an owner, as an operator, because this is the primary lifeblood of your business. This is your revenue coming in. And if you don't have like hard eyes on it, then you're probably not paying attention to a lot of other very important areas of your business as well.
And even your people, right? Like Drew, maybe you speak to a little bit of, obviously I know that you've run a lot of coffee, you've helped a lot of coffee clients, you've done a lot of cool things with coffee, but like even the power of gamifying things, right? Like challenging people. I know you're doing that with one of our coffee clients with car times, where you take a snapshot of numbers, you push them out and say, oh, the store's doing good. Can this store keep it up? Like people feed off of that stuff. Then you take it away from I'm just making a cup of coffee. I'm just pulling shots. I'm just adding in, my flavors. I'm just putting something out the window. Sometimes customers suck, but then you begin to like create this culture where you begin to gamify it. And then you can take it even the next level of bonusing them out on it. So maybe Drew, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's the young baristas, of course, are always looking up to their managers too. And when you have the metrics to exactly see the heartbeat of your area, and the manager can call out, hey, this month we're going to do this month we're going to do that. Well, it does impress upon the younger baristas that, well, it's possible that we can change these numbers. It's possible we can control these things. We have the tools that gives us a foot up on, just guessing of what's going to happen.
Yep.
And even just in that, the baristas get competitive. It's, they're young, so they're competitive.
Chipping their teeth, love to chip their teeth at each other, right?
Yeah, and the managers will look at their sales and reach goals, and even if the stores aren't on the same level of, the bottom line, if they look at percentage growth, and the managers will compete that way. So a real small store can still compete with a big store, just by percentage year-over-year growth. And it's actually, it's inspiring to those kids to have something to be, proud of in what they do, other than just, coming in, turning on the lights and leaving when they're done.
Yeah, I think that, we've talked about in the past the incentive matrix, and the incentive matrix was all based upon how they're saving money, right? Like how are they shearing down their cogs? How are they keeping a pulse on their labor? And then that's going to increase the profitability of the store, and you're going to give them a rev share of sorts, like giving them ownership at some level. You're not making them an owner, but you're treating them like an owner with a rev share. You're giving them a share in your revenue, a share in your profit. That's one side of things. You're giving them a percentage of savings. That's one way they can make money. But then when you can gamify this side and you begin to bonus out, you begin to say, hey, whoever's able to get over their reach goal, will give you a bonus of $150. Like we'll give the manager who wins, gets up over their reach, $150. Well, let me tell you what, if you can grow my store by 200K in 1 month, or 24K, like if 24K, do you think I'm going to feel okay about giving you a $150 bonus? Like, yeah, every day, all day long, I'm going to feel okay with giving 150, but 150 may sound like to us, like, well, that feels like that's not very generous, right? They just made you 24 grand over what you were expecting this month. Like that doesn't feel, but to our people, like $150, like that feels good. I got a bonus. Why? Because I chipped my teeth, I pushed my people, I pushed my sales goals, and I got bonused out on top of my rev share that I got from keeping my cogs down. And at that point, what you begin to give them is the controls of being a true owner. You're giving them ownership of, I've controlled my growth, I've controlled my costs, and therefore I'm going to make a percentage off of what I saved the company, which why wouldn't I give them a percentage of realized savings? And I've grown my sales. Why wouldn't I give them a little bump for growing my sales? They feel really good. They become more attached to me as a business, and I get to reap as the owner the benefits of their labor. So it's like a win-win-win scenario all the way around. It creates a culture within the stores where it's camaraderie, and there's like this traveling together of a stores, and it's rallying against that Jordan store against Drew's store, and like them chipping teeth at each other, and there's this camaraderie, and it creates a greater leader because the leader understands the metrics, like the levers they're pulling to control their business. And in the end, it makes me as a company more profitable. So this whole sales goal and reach is a powerful tool, but especially for this summary page. So what this summary page shows you is the ability to see how it all works out across the organization. So what you're able to see is here are all the actuals. Here's the last year's sales. Here is what we performed. Now this particular year, and you're going to see it here, Roasters went through some pretty dark times. We hit some pretty big speed bumps that threw some pretty big waves, but you can see the trajectory here. Like we were killing it, you know. Q1 to LY 22%. Q2 we're still at almost 4%. So between those two, like you see that like we're making some pretty great money, you know, like $500,000 growth over the year previous. I mean, obviously, as you come into the latter year, you see us starting to lose money here. And then, you know, to LY, we finished 1% above. I mean, we had a higher potential, but, you know, hard things happen. And that happens sometimes. But I think the cool thing about this is what you begin to see is had we stuck to what I had predicted sales goals to be, you know, like I had hoped for this much, you know, to, you know, I had some pretty high hopes. Well, you know, if we could have gotten to these numbers here where we're at almost $1 million over, then that begins to, and then I know what COGS cost me. I know what labor cost me. I can literally predict what my profit's going to be, which is then going to tell me where I can invest that next year. I can then say, okay, is this the year that I'm going to invest in an energy drink, which is where we came to with Wes in this particular situation. I can justify the outlaying of the extra cash because I know what my profitability is going to be. Why? Because I just predicted what my sales were, and I've got a good foot on what on the break for what my COGS and my labor is going to be. And then I begin to predict how much profit I have in the year. So I know how many more locations I can open up in a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, because I've simply got a good control on all of the different levers. Does you guys have any thoughts on that you want to throw in?
Yeah, you're definitely I mean, there's always gonna be anomalies, right? Because we can predict the future, we can't know the future.
Right.
COVID was a really huge anomaly for a lot of businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, Roasters definitely not accepted from that one. Most companies were accepted from that one. But like you can say, okay, anomalies happen, but anomalies aren't permanent. So if I have an anomaly this year, odds are that next year I'll be lined back up with my projections. So even if you're in the middle of like an anomaly year, like, you know, this year or 2020 or whatever it may be, you'd be like, how am I supposed to predict the future? I have no idea what this year is like. You can say, okay, this is an anomaly.
Yeah.
Like I can bet on this not happening the same way. I can bet on my past still being a good predictor of my future, but still gives you a really good experience to be able to forecast, okay, maybe I can open up another store, when most companies be like, you're crazy to think about opening up another store right now. We're in the middle of lockdowns. We're like, well, this is just for right now, but based on my last 8 years of business, I probably have still a pretty good opportunity to open up a store next year.
I think that's the key, right? Is like the more we can get away from gut checks. I think obviously what makes good entrepreneurs is that gut check. But the danger can be is when entrepreneurs live solely by gut check instead of actual numbers. There were several times Wes was so good at gut checks. Like he almost had like a sixth sense of like how to predictively go with things. But sometimes that really worked against him because sometimes like those same anxieties would start feelings in him where Ben and I would have to come back and say, actually, the metrics say this. Actually, this is what numbers are telling us. And then I feel like it like put peace to mind for him of, oh, okay, well then let's continue that direction. I think the bigger and bigger you get, it's fine to still live by gut check, but when you can drive things back to metrics, it's so much more powerful because then you're making gut check based upon fact and you can make predictability out of that. So I think it's super important to look at that. I would say too, let's look at some practical examples. So I'm just going to take you into our meeting notes. this is all of our content discussions about what we're talking about, but I made a list here that I thought would be smart for you to be able to review when it comes to how you can actually grow. Oh, that's the wrong date. How you can actually grow your sales. So, and what I did is I tried to break it out on them versus you. So here it is here. So I'm going to zoom in just a little, maybe. So here's the list. How do you grow? How do they grow sales? And that comes from them thinking about it. So here's how it works is how do you grow sales? You make them true merchants. For them, car times, right? Like get them thinking about car times. That's where it's going to be. Like that's their best way to control it is how, when we have volume, how can we get as many people through there as possible? There are some of them where it's going to be them and you, but these are ones that they can control. So you've given them this tool where they understand what their sales are month over month. But now, how can they actually grow those sales? How can I actually get to this as my goal, Aaron? Like, where do I get there? Well, the way you can do that is car times. Are you banging down your times? Are you getting as many people through the door on your fastest times, on your busiest times? Get them through the door. Obviously, don't sacrifice the customer experience, but car times is key. Another one is upsells, right? Extra pumps, extra shots, add-ons for food. Like get your people good at making suggestions. Like, hey, have you tried the new coffee cake? Speaking to Drew's coffee cake scenario, there's opportunity to grow your sales in how many cars you're seeing and how many units you're selling. We with all of our coffee clients, we have a scorecard where we track week over week transactions and items per transaction. So average item and average amount of transactions, average amount of items sold for the sake of this very number so that we can see when things begin to drop and we can see how we can encourage people. Hey, how could we get one more item out of that? How could we get this many more transactions? Because if you can just do this many more transactions at this much of an average dollar amount per transaction, this many of an item count, then you begin to see things start to escalate. So upsells, foods, pumps, shots, flash sales. So this is like, we went through a season where some of our stores were starting to drop and we're like, hey, let's do a happy hour for energy drinks and let's do it for specific stores. Not all stores, but one store in particular was sucking it in the afternoons. So let's do happy hour in the afternoons at this particular store from the hours of 2 to 4, like our dead time in the afternoon zone. And let's drive all traffic. Anybody in the area can get energy drinks for $2. $2 for energy drinks during happy hour. And for us, it was a way to begin to drive sales. And remember, all we're trying to do is create new habits in people. So it doesn't mean you have to do it forever, but you want to get them addicted to coming in for energy drinks between 2 and 4 in the afternoons on a consistent basis. The way you do that is drive focused traffic at that. So I think it like flash sales. Another thing would be seasonal or hard goods sales. So like thinking through, when do we see a lull in sales? Well, there's really good profitability in hard goods, selling flasks, selling hydro flasks, selling mugs, maybe in the winter time. Do it, whatever it is that you can get a little bit more profit out of, beginning to control that. When you start to see year over year drop in certain months, like how could we between February and March roll out a hard goods rollout where it would actually inflate our numbers because we're adding something in and we're creating a season out of something. So I think that that's another good suggestion is seasonal hard good sales. Collaborative promos. This is like working with other businesses in your area where like I think it was Outsider Coffee that came on talking about their power hour, where they allow an outside business to sponsor drinks being purchased at a certain amount of time. And it gets that business visibility in front of your crowd. It gets you visibility in front of their crowd. And it creates a drive in sales because everybody wants a free cup of coffee, right? So then you're able to really drive them in. Also, free drink cards to nearby business. So obviously this is they and you, right? Flash sales is going to be something you have to have a conversation with them about, but they being your people, you being the owner. This is seasonal hard goods. Let them come up with good decisions or good ideas and you make the decision. Same thing with Power Hour. They make a relationship with companies and then bring it to you and you make decisions, but you're empowering them all the way along of making them the true merchant. Like that's like get them thinking of ownership. This one is maybe you're thinking about how they can make these relationships. Well, a real good way to do that is give them a stack of free drink cards that they can take to nearby businesses and promote group drink orders for their business. That's something they can do. They don't need you to do that. They can come alongside of you and say, hey, let's take these over there. Let's encourage people to come and buy drinks for their business in the afternoons. Maybe let's do group drinks, and then I'll pay an extra barista to come for that hour just to service delivering drinks to that nearby business. But that's going to happen by making friends. And then maybe you're like, all those things sound like cost money. New sticker drops. Like that's a very inexpensive way to do it. Like begin to create a craze around your stickers. That's not a big spend. And then you begin to create an event out of dropping stickers, and everybody loves stickers, man. And I mean, Dutch Bros has proven that to all of us, right? The way that Dutch Bros does stickers is brilliant. You know, they send out limited amount of packs. They know they're going to run out. They do that on purpose. They're trying to drive demand. They don't want everybody to have one. They want the people that are there first. And you can create a circus at your stands by just doing drops for stickers, which speak back to what your sales and reach goals are predicting. So you begin to predict your own traffic based upon events that you're causing. So guys, I know I just did a lot of talking. What are your thoughts? You guys can pick out any of those that, or if there are ones that aren't listed there that you want to point out. I think that's something to talk about.
I would say guaranteed every coffee shop in the US has a real estate agency 4 or 5 doors down.
Yeah.
Just about any location you find, there's going to be a little strip mall across the street. It's got a real estate agency, and that free drink cards to nearby businesses. Real estate agencies are your bread and butter when it comes to that. You can drop off 10 free drinks for everybody working there, and a stack of 30 free drinks for them to hand out to new clients and new home buyers who are going to be looking for homes in your local area and who are going to be looking for coffee shops. I mean, it costs you $150 maybe in free drink retail price, but you're picking up 30 more rooftops from people who are going to be living around your shop. That's a potential of 30 more regular everyday customers. Like that's a no-brainer. And those real estate agencies, those guys and gals love their coffee. I've been in the coffee industry long enough. I know real estate agents love to go into coffee shops. And that's the easiest, most symbiotic relationship. That and banks. Those two businesses are really symbiotic with coffee shops. You can easily create good relationships with them.
I love that. Drew, what about you, man? What of these things here, what are things that stick out to you?
Yeah, I like the flash sales. Those were always really fun. If we had time to plan them, they were
right. Don't let your social media gal fall and get something out there without telling the baristas they're going to need to have a few extra bodies working the stand.
Yeah, it's, if you have the people in the right seats for management, it's more than likely they're not going to be forever managers, but they're the right people that want to do the best where they're at while they're getting to where they're actually going. So when you can collaborate on a flash sale or like a power hour promo of, we have business owners all the time coming through our stands. That's just everybody drinks coffee, and the baristas know them on a personal level at that point, and they can choose the people probably that would be best suited for those types of deals. Now, also one thing that we learned is doing a power hour is like, you're not charging anyone out, so your car times are a lot faster. So those hours could be pretty huge. So plan those out. We were like, yeah, maybe like $300, $400, and it was like 800. We're like, sorry, dentist office, we didn't charge anyone. So they're all real good ideas, all fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I think that the main thing is, though, you're wanting to spawn conversations, right? Like when you begin to give people, as we talk about the easiest way to do it, I would say, like, the key is like gamify it and create easy visibility. Like you want your people to know who's winning. Like don't make it cumbersome, like make it very simple. Like make your dashboard something easy for them to see and relate to and be able to identify where their store is at. Because I think that there's power in that. Like, so whatever you're doing, as the nice thing about a sheet like this is it makes it really easy to grab these numbers and copy them and drop them into just a front facing sheet that you're pasting into, and then screenshotting that and texting it out to your group, sending it out through WhatsApp, whatever it is, dropping a screenshot in and just being like, ho, Richland, here she comes. Like all you have to do is make it fun and push it out there. And then it's the momentum that people feed on, right? It's just like throwing blood in the water. You know what I mean? Like the sharks circle and they want it. So make it simple, make it easy for people to see who's winning, where they're at, where they're going. And then make it easy for ideas like, hey, here's some ideas I'm going to give you guys as starters. And then when they come back and they say, oh man, I don't know if I'm going to make my goal, like your question can be very simple of, well, which of these things have you tried? You know what I mean? Like you're holding them to, here's some ideas, and then allowing them to get creative. These are just starters, right? This is just starter conversation. Your people are going to have great ideas. And this is the greatest beauty of the bigger and bigger you get. Like for Roasters, they were at over 150 employees at 16 locations, right? That's a lot of contacts in their personal cell phones. I mean, like that's a lot. And if you're going to reward people based upon sales, like, and maybe the manager chooses to take that $150 and take everybody out to dinner one night, or like go take everybody out for bowling. Maybe they're going to use that, and they use that to promote it. Like, make it easy for people to share whatever is going to drive sales through your door, because I think that's the key, right? If every one of your baristas put out on their social media, put out a text to their friends, put out whatever, they know that they're in that window and it's between Drew and Jordan on who's going to win. Like, your manager can lean into the people of, hey, put out a blast, like get people in here. And then they put that blast out and it drives people back through your door so that they can win. That benefits you, and make it easy for how they're going to give it. So if it's a social media, like Drew was saying for the flash sales, make sure your social media person is putting it out in such a way that it's easy to be shareable. And it's easy for your baristas to go and grab it and share it to their own pages. Make sure that, man, if there's words you want people to use, make it really easy for them to grab and share for the sake of getting people in, because ultimately we realize people are distracted, right? They're only going to give us so much attention, And so I think that make it very, very loud of what you're offering would be my suggestion for you. Do you guys have any other suggestions along those lines of how we can encourage our people to grow sales?
I think one of the big ones that we always ran across was those hard goods sales, because especially when we did those higher price point hard goods like the hydro flask. So when you're talking about the $45 retail price point for a hydro flask on the low end,
right?
So when we started those managers, those competitive managers, those managers who were looking at their sales and reach bonuses, they were looking at their incentive matrix. They saw an easy way to skyrocket their sales for a month. So they'd be like, send all the hydro flasks to me, I'll sell them all, because that increased the bottom line for their incentive matrix without having to really increase their cost of goods. So their bonus in the incentive matrix went through the roof on those months, because they were like, if I bring all this in, I can boost sales and get a bigger bonus at the end of the month. So hard goods, which was traditionally for us a very difficult thing to get managers and baristas to sell, because they're not salesmen, they're making coffee. All of a sudden became one of the easiest things to sell, because they're like, if there's any extra, send them to my shop. I'll take all of the hydro flasks. We'll sell them all.
That's right. No, that's good. I think that, and that was what you started seeing in the channels and WhatsApp was how, like, we would drop, like, once again, to get back to make it easy, make it simple. Ben would drop out there, or the regionals like Drew would drop out there to all their regional stores. Hey, how are you guys doing on hydro flasks? And then we'd have everybody tell us where they're at on their counts. And then it would turn into a feeding frenzy, because some stores would be like, oh, I'm down to 0. And some store would say I have 10. And this store would be like, send those to me. I'll do those. I'll get those done. But like giving them very clear visibility, because you know how it is. Like, it's a busy morning. You're not thinking about how many hydro flasks you have compared to the store up the street. All you're thinking about is getting coffee out the window. But if you give them that visibility, then you insert that into their brain and they start thinking a different way. So be thinking of ways that you can influence your people that's going to spawn more ideas that are going to increase your sales, but also increase their opportunity to sell. Drew, did you have something you want to say to that?
Well, you on the hard goods, it's, customers aren't just loyal to a location, they're loyal to the people who work there. So having the managers even mention things like, hey, we got hydro flasks going on sale in a few days. It creates like a culture of inclusivity, like, oh, I support this store, like this is the best store. And you see people shout out, my favorite store is this store, my favorite barista is this barista. And those are the people that, they're going to lean into to boost the sales. And those customers, word of mouth is one of the most powerful forms of marketing. So having the managers connect with, those people on a personal level and helping them boost the sales, it's easier than teaching baristas to be salesmen.
100%.
We're already good at just talking all the time. So when we connect with people, it's not like selling. It's like, hey, it's like a competition. Help me out.
Yeah. And I think too, that some of the people got really good at realizing you're not talking people into something. Like throw out what's your one sentence that's going to bait somebody into taking the action that you want them to take, and if you're tying your hydro flask to a cup of coffee, like as far as, you get a free cup of coffee with this hydro flask, something along the lines of you're incentivizing them to take the action you want. Like, I think that just making it very easy on people to say yes. Like, don't make it cumbersome. Don't make it a mouthful for your baristas. They're not salespeople. And you don't want them to increase the car times by them dicking around at the window trying to sell a hydro flask. Like, no. Like, how can you make it so simple for that person to say yes, boost sales, benefit the store that wins, and create profitability for the company? So I think that be thinking things through. How can you gamify it? How can you create easy visibility? How can you create easy shareability? I think that's really key. Let's move over to Slido and see if we have any questions.